The 16th Amendment to the United States Constitution fundamentally changed the way the federal government collected revenue by granting Congress the power to levy an income tax. Ratified on February 3, 1913, this amendment marked a shift from the government's reliance on tariffs and excise taxes to a system that taxed individual earnings. Today, the federal income tax is one of the most significant sources of government funding, but its origins and implementation were heavily debated for decades before its ratification. Before the 16th Amendment, the U.S. government primarily relied on tariffs, taxes on imports, and excise taxes, taxes on specific goods like alcohol and tobacco, to generate revenue. However, these taxes were often unpopular, especially among working-class citizens who bore a disproportionate burden of the costs. Wealthy individuals who made much of their income through investments and property holdings often escaped taxation entirely. The first attempt at implementing an income tax came during the Civil War. In 1861, Congress passed the first federal income tax law to help fund the Union war effort. This tax imposed a 3% levy on incomes over $800, but it was temporary and repealed in 1872. The debate over income taxation resurfaced in the late 19th century, when the nation experienced growing income inequality and economic instability. The Industrial Revolution had created enormous wealth for business tycoons, while many workers struggled under low wages and poor conditions. Progressives and populists began advocating for an income tax to ensure that the wealthiest Americans paid their fair share. In 1894, Congress passed the Wilson-Gorman Tariff Act, which included a 2% income tax on earnings over $4,000. However, the following year, the Supreme Court struck it down in Pollock v. Farmers Loan and Trust Co., 1895, ruling that a direct income tax was unconstitutional unless apportioned among the states based on population. This decision effectively blocked Congress from imposing an income tax without a constitutional amendment. The push for tax reform gained momentum in the early 20th century, driven by the progressive movement. Reformers argued that an income tax was necessary to address economic inequality, reduce reliance on regressive tariffs, and provide the government with stable revenue. President William Howard Taft supported the idea, and in 1909, Congress proposed the 16th Amendment, giving the federal government the explicit authority to tax incomes without apportionment among the states. After a 4-year ratification process, the 16th Amendment was officially added to the Constitution on February 3, 1913. That same year, Congress passed the Revenue Act of 1913, which introduced a graduated income tax system. The first federal income tax rates ranged from 1% on incomes over $3,000 to 7% on incomes over $500,000. At the time, this tax affected only a small percentage of the population, primarily targeting the wealthiest Americans. Over the following decades, the federal income tax system expanded significantly, particularly during World War I, when tax rates increased to help finance the war effort. By the mid-20th century, income tax had become the primary source of federal revenue, funding government programs such as Social Security, infrastructure projects, and national defense. Despite its acceptance, the 16th Amendment has remained controversial. Critics argue that income taxation infringes on individual economic freedom, while supporters believe it is essential for funding government services and reducing income inequality. Debates continue over tax rates, deductions, loopholes, and the balance between taxing wages versus wealth. The 16th Amendment reshaped the American economy and government, ensuring that the federal government had a stable and flexible source of funding. While tax laws continue to evolve, the amendment's impact remains central to discussions on economic policy, fiscal responsibility, and government spending.